Um, so we'll go straight into it tonight. Of course, we're continuing our topic on embracing others. The specific subtopic that we're going to be covering today is a condescending attitude. A while, actually, I'm ashamed to say that I forgot what year he died, but if you guys remember Stephen Hawking, I very much took him as a sort of a role model because despite all the stuff that happened in his life, of course, his physical ailments, he used to be very physically active, and his physical ailment put him back, lo trazó en la vida. I found it encouraging that he still found a way to, apply the talents that the Lord had given him, the gifts that the Lord had given him, and even if he wasn't physically able to do or physically able to test himself or push himself to the limits, he did it mentally. So it's a person that I genuinely, find as a good role model. But the reason I say this is because he said a quote once that relates to this topic. And the quote reads like this. Very simple quote. I like it. People who boast about their IQs are losers. Very straightforward. So with that, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about condescending. I'm just going to let y'all know that I'm going to be drinking a lot of water because last time I was up here, my mouth was really dry. It felt like the Sahara Desert. So give me a second. I got 2 tiny bottles up here, so I think I'll make it through. Okay, so we're going to start with the definition of condescending. So what is condescending? And I use the Webster Dictionary. So condescending, showing feelings of superiority, being patronizing. Using it as a behavior, as an attitude, it's to do something in a haughty way, as though it was below one's dignity or level of importance. And then let's go ahead and define haughty because it's a word we don't often find or use. Haughty is arrogantly superior and disdainful. That's the reason I decided to choose that word, is because it has a very negative connotation. Arrogantly superior and disdainful character. So this behavior attacks an individual's self-esteem, and it attacks an individual's self-esteem. When you use it against someone, you're attacking their self-esteem, and it can be particularly dangerous to people who have insecurities. I'm sure we have either been victims to or have participated in the condescending attitude at some point in our lives, and we've found that it can be very toxic to the individual that's receiving it. And if you're in the receiving end, you identify that it is very toxic to yourself. It can signal out your insecurities, and it can often lead to a more heated discussion. Most condescending people battle with insecurities themselves or are over insecure. And with that, we'll go ahead and define a root causes for this behavior. So like anything, like the last one that we discussed, there are root causes for any behavior that we discuss. Specifically, the most common root causes for the condescending behavior are pride and insecurity. And a condescending attitude shows a lack of respect, grace, and finesse. And finesse being a delicacy or a tactful way of speech. So a condescending attitude, most people with this attitude have much skill and knowledge, but fail in relationships due to ignorance of basic people skills. And this is true. The reason why a lot of people that have the condescending attitude, they can be very smart and very intellectual and be very experienced in a certain area of life, but the reason that they fail socially is because they don't have basic social skills, or they don't have any motivation to better those social skills. And the reason why, to go even further, these people don't better their social skills is because they find no need to better their social skills. They're like, well, I'm self-sufficient. Why do I need someone to do something that I can do myself in half the time? There's no need to continue to talk with people or to do this or to do that. I can do whatever I need to do quicker and more efficiently. And in a sense, that actually kind of toggles back to the idea that we were talking about the last message, the aloof attitude, where you think you're self-sufficient. In fact, you're not self-sufficient. You need people to input their ideas, but also you need to be willing, as we'll cover later, to I guess we'll say it, to say it lightly, not necessarily stoop down, but humble yourself to the education or the experience level that other people have, so that way you can exemplify the Spirit of Christ, but likewise so that whatever it is that they are more experienced in, they can give to you in the same manner that you would like to receive it, the golden rule. But I'm going a little too far ahead, so we'll go back here to the itinerary. So the author shares this quote, and I really like it, so I wanted to share it with everyone, and just wanted to let you know that I kind of rephrased the quote because the quote she had was kind of long, and I felt like a little long-winded, so I modified it a little bit. Here goes the water again. So the author shares this: the downside of being quick is the accompanied impatience with slowness, which in the eyes of a smart guy is everyone. So, very true. One of the things that you get with increased intelligence, with increased talent, or with increased skill is impatience for those who can't deliver at the same level that you can. Not everybody can do the things that you can do at your standard or at your level. You know, some people are gifted with math. By no means do I identify myself as gifted with math. I've always, my father, every time he comes up here, he's always said that. One of the things that I need to do is swallow math every day, do math every day. I don't do it, but I should. But, it's something that I need to continually get better. But there are people at school that are very gifted in it. They're very rapid in it. They can look at a formula and very quickly identify how it was derived and how it can be used. Their mind is just works in a certain way. That doesn't mean that I can't improve myself to be that way, but it will take more effort. And if it's a person that's showing me how to be that way, they have to have the patience with me if they want me to get to that level. You know what I mean? So, we read that. So, with that, we're going to go ahead and go into really straight into the Bible here, and we're going to go through a few biblical stories in which this attitude is exemplified. And the person in which we're going to be focusing on today is the Apostle Paul. For some reason, most of these topics, the Apostle Paul is covered. Apostle Paul covers everything, so, he's kind of the fallback. But, so we're going to go and talk, we're going to go through some of the letters that Apostle Paul wrote to the Church of Corinthians. So if you can please accompany me to 1 Corinthians 4:7, and with there we'll start our reading. And if you guys have your Bibles, I've encouraged you to pull it up while I get this sip of water. I know it's up there already, but I say it because I kind of have lost the ability to navigate through the Bible quickly. But okay, so 1 Corinthians 4:7 reads, "For what gives you the right to make such a judgment? What do you have that God hasn't given you? And if everything you have is from God, why boast as though it were not a gift?" So, we have to acknowledge before anything that God is a provider of our gifts. Gifts like intellect, experience, exposure, or even work ethic. Sometimes we brag about our work ethic, or our ability, or maybe we brag about our integrity to do something at work without it being told to us. But really, those are all gifts from God. There's really no reason to boast from it. By boasting on it, you are glorifying God. You should only be glorifying God, not yourself, because that gift didn't come from you. It came and originated from God as a gift for you. So, why boast of it as if it's from your own hand? So that's our first verse, 1 Corinthians 4:7. And the idea behind that verse, we want to write down, or whatever it is that you're doing. You're taking mental notes like I do, and then they disappear in a few days. What you want to remember from that is what the gifts that you have, they're from God. So why boast about them? Boast about God providing them and giving to you. Boast about God, but don't boast of them as if they come from your own hand. 2 Corinthians 11. You don't have to go here. I want to just cover the entire chapter here because we're going to be using 2 Corinthians 12. But 2 Corinthians 11 is a good basis to understand for 2 Corinthians 12 because they're a little bit related. So, in 2 Corinthians 11, Paul uses satire a lot in this one here, but he boasts, in quotations, he boasts about his accomplishments and calls it foolish to do so in the first place. So if you go there, and we're not going to go there, but you'll find that Paul is boasting about his accomplishments. He's saying, well, I did this and I did that. But every time he boasts about something new in the chapter, he says, but it is foolish for me to do so. To do so in the first place. Yet it nonetheless is to establish credibility over false apostles. And the reason why Paul does it to begin with is because he wants to establish his credibility for the apostles, because there were a bunch of false apostles going to the Church of Corinthians saying some crazy stuff, being legalistic, and Paul wanted them to know that the things that they were saying were false. So he wanted to, in a way, set his authority. And something from what I was reading, that was what I was attaining. And, we'll talk at home and we'll find out if that's wrong, if that's the wrong interpretation. But what happened was that Paul wanted to set his authority or establish his credibility as an apostle of Christ. So he boasts about his accomplishments. And from this, we can get a very interesting application. So this is generally applicable in the professional life, showing us how to show or showcase our accomplishments without being condescending. For example, how do you share in a resume that you did this or that you showed integrity without coming off as condescending? That's a possible application for this particular chapter. Or interview responses. You're not going to respond with, oh, yes, this person didn't listen to me, but I cut them off and I did this and I did that. No, you're going to respond with a more loving tone and a more forgiving tone when the interviewer asks you the question. Or it's a way of showcasing that you're qualified without the pride. You want to showcase that you're qualified without the pride. So you take the example that Paul sets forth in 2 Corinthians 11. Again, to go over it again, the example states that he calls it foolish to boast. But it is the truth, so you say the truth, but without in a boasting manner. Like, I did this or I did that. You simply state it as truth. And we'll go into another verse which details further how you can talk about your accomplishments without it coming as boastful or as condescending. So now we're going to go into a few verses, and this we'll read together, and we'll have a few lessons to take from this specific snippet of chapter 12. So if you guys can please pull up 2 Corinthians 12, and it's going to be 1 through 10. Okay, I'm done with the first bottle. Okay, so it reads like this, and what we're going to do, we'll read it through all once, and then we'll go through it a second time, but we'll stop as we read it the second time. That way, so that first time we read it, we can get the flow for what's going on, and then the second time we'll go ahead and stop at certain verses where we have some notations for us to review, okay? So let's read it all together. Oh, no, let's not do that. That's going to be terrible. But this boasting will do no good. But I must go in. I will reluctantly tell about visions and revelations from the Lord. I was caught up to the third heaven 14 years ago. Whether I was in my body or out of my body, I don't know. Only God knows. Yes, only God knows whether I was in my body or outside my body, but I don't know. Yes, what's going on here is he's giving a brief boast, not really boasting. He's saying what happened, that he was caught up and that he was revealed something in heaven, something glorious, and it gives him reason to boast about it, but he doesn't do it. That I was clearly caught up to paradise and heard things so astounding that they cannot be expressed in words, things no human is allowed to tell. That experience is worth boasting about. But I'm not going to do it. I will boast only about my weakness. If I wanted to boast, I would be no fool in doing so, because I would be telling the truth. But I won't do it, because I don't want anyone to give me credit beyond what they can see in my life or hear in my message. Even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God, so to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in your weakness." So now I am glad to boast about my weakness, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weakness and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. When I am weak, then I am strong. And we'll cut it there. Now I'll read it again. You guys got some understanding from it. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard this a million times and have probably heard a preacher talk about it a million times before. I know I have. Maybe didn't know where it was, but we've talked about it before. So we'll go ahead and restart now back to 1. So now we're going to go into what we can attain from these various verses or from what Paul's writing here. So let's focus on 12:1 first. So 12:1 says, boasting will do no good overall. It is not profitable. So it's not profitable. You won't get anything from boasting. If anything, I'd say you probably lose some in boasting because you identify yourself as superior, and that condescending attitude already has a negative connotation in our culture. And by boasting about something, let's correct this. When you're boasting about your works, when you're boasting about something you do, when you're boasting about the things of God, it's different. But when you're boasting about something you do, some work you do, or some accolade or something like that, there is no benefit. And it's identified here in the carta here. This boasting will do no good. And this boasting, he's talking about the boasting that he did in the previous chapter satirically. Now we'll go ahead and read through. Actually, let's go ahead and jump to now 12:6, which is where our next point is going to be. So in 12:6, we find something else. Boasting about something true isn't foolish, especially if it relates to the matters of God. So I thought I was a little curious because it's boasting overall doesn't do good. It's neutral. But when you boast about something regarding the matters of God, it isn't foolish. If anything, it's the complete opposite of it. It's good. But Paul chose not to boast. So that's something curious for us to know. So even though it had something to do with the things of the Lord, Paul did not choose to boast about it. Or an experience that he had with the Lord, let's be more clear about it. Paul didn't choose to boast about it because he didn't want anyone to think more highly of him than they found him to be. And the reason why is because he wanted to reserve all of that glory to God. He didn't want the people to think of him as being, some other, whoa, this guy has so much, and they didn't want him to be the center. He wants God and the glory to go to God. And that goes again back to the condescending attitude. One of the reasons why people do it is because they want the glory, they want the attention, they want to feed those insecurities that they have within them. Insecurities either relating to not having much attention, or maybe you don't feel like we're going back to it. You feel like you're not having, a lot of people aren't paying attention to you, or maybe you don't feel that you're smart and you want to be quick-witted about something that you know, so that way you can shut people down and they can know how you feel or something like that. Maybe there's a lot of different reasons why, but for the most part, it's because you want the attention and you want to showcase your dominance, I suppose, on the other person, on the subordinate that doesn't know as much as you do. We need to acknowledge, especially in the Christian setting, that all the glory should be reserved to God. It goes again a little bit to the idea of the gifts. It's like how can we boast about something that we, didn't do or didn't achieve? It was all through the grace of God. It was through the gifts of God. The same thing goes here. It's all of the glory should be reserved to God. Yes, we could have great experience and stuff like that. It's great to talk about that, but not in the first person. I didn't do this or I didn't do that. It was all through the grace of God that you had that experience. So kind of touching there on expressing a condescending attitude in the things of the Lord, which the Pharisees did a lot. I'm going to use that as an example, but I decided to stick with Paul. So let's go ahead and move on to 12:7. So 12:7. 12:7 is, we have a few things we can get from here, but overall, 12:7 reflects the life of a servant of Christ. Now, I do want to apologize because here I am drifting a little bit from the topic, but you'll see how it kind of joins in back again later as we progress downwards in my notes. But we'll go ahead and talk about this. So, in the Christian walk, we'll find that there are moments of deep humiliation followed by mountaintop experiences. And Paul highlights this in chapters 11 and 12. In chapter 11, the last verse of chapter 11, actually, if we can just pull it up real quick so that way people have it as a reference. It's going to be 1 Corinthians 11:33, I believe. But it's not super important, just so you can see it there. But the moment that Paul had of deep humiliation, no, I'm sorry, it's second. Sorry, my bad. That was my bad. 2 Corinthians 11:33. But the moment of deep humiliation that Paul experiences here, and he relates in the previous chapter, is being lowered in a bucket. He was being lowered in a basket, let's say. He was being lowered in a basket as he was, I believe, apologies, I'm not very familiar with the story, but as he was escaping a city. And he relates this as an embarrassing moment of his Christian walk, or a valley, or a moment of deep humiliation. But then if we progress to chapter 12, we see that Paul is talking about a mountaintop experience, something of an exhilarating revelation. So we have these two periods in our life, and we have to identify them. Cyclic, we have ups and downs, is kind of what we call it. And Paul kind of identifies it here. After enjoying a mountaintop experience, like Paul, we will often suffer some thorn in the flesh. And here we can go back to 12:7. So after a mountaintop experience, especially after a mountaintop experience, we'll very likely be given a thorn in the flesh. And our trials may differ from Paul, of course. His trial is never specified or indicated. But, sorry, I kind of lost myself here. But the fruit that's going to be produced by that thorn will remain the same. The thorn in our lives is used by God, who is greater than Satan, to further the work of the Lord by keeping Paul humble. And this is where we go into this is how we tie back into it. Humility is our weapon against pride. It's pretty obvious, right? But the reason why that's so important is because humility is the way in which we can defeat pride, which is one of the roots of the condescending attitude, and probably one of the most dangerous roots of the condescending attitude, because it could be one of the most, I'd say it's a weed that can multiply exponentially quick. A weed that's extremely dangerous and can be spread into the lives of other believers as well. So, humility is one of our weapons that God has given us to fight pride, to fight this root. And we must acknowledge that humility comes from the acknowledgement of the thorn that we have in our lives. But here we can progress even further. So, we'll go into this point right here. Successful service depends on a weak servant. Yes, I can't remember where I was going with that now. Okay, so good. So, now we'll go ahead with the idea of humility in your mind. We'll go ahead and jump into 12:9. And we're almost done. Oh my God, this bottle is kind of hard to open. Okay, so we'll go ahead into 12:9. So 12:9 reads like this, or is up there, but the notes here say, "In our weakness we should boast, because God gives us the grace to bear them." We already talked about this. It's not what we asked for. We don't ask for, some of us ask for the strength to go through our trials, but for the most part, if we ever have a trial or a mountain or a low in our life, we ask the Lord to get us out of it. Get me out of this low in my life. Not rarely, but I wouldn't say we naturally ask for strength, but that's what God gives us. God doesn't get us out of it. He gives us strength to go through. So, with that in mind, we'll go ahead and ask ourselves the question, what is this grace? What is this grace that Paul is talking about? Because it seems like it's a powerful weapon in battling this attitude. and maybe many others. Any attitude that has to do with the root of pride, grace is this thing that we can use and utilize to defeat this attitude. So what is grace? Grace is the companionship of Jesus and the assurance of his strength and promises. Boasting about weaknesses is used by Paul. It's an expression used by Paul to express how worthy grace is via Christ. So again, to kind of recap, because I kind of went over that really quick, my bad. What is grace? Grace is the companionship of Jesus Christ each of us have. Accepting Jesus Christ into your life, you have that companionship with Christ. You can talk with Christ. You have that transparency with him. You read the Bible. You can hear him talking to you, directly to you. And it's the assurance of his strength and promises. Those promises are what's key. Those promises within them have statements which can help you battle this particular type of attitude as well. And we'll go through some of the promises as well. But again, it's that companionship of Jesus, that ability to ask the Lord for strength and the spirit within him that allows you to identify the weaknesses in your life and pinpoint those weaknesses and enact change according to the word of God. Okay? So, I don't know, we'll maybe touch that again later really quick, but we'll go ahead and move on to our fourth point. So, fourth point is going to be Romans 12:16. So Romans 12:16. So we're done with Corinthians. So, live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people. And don't think you know it all. Straightforward. We should learn, and this is a quote that This is a quote that the writer used again, and I genuinely liked it. It says, we should learn to condescend without being condescending. And condescend means to humbling yourself to people who are in a lower status. You know, this kind of what we opened up with, the first thing that we said. You know, it's going to people who, you know, maybe have a little bit more limited knowledge than you do and sharing with them freely the knowledge that you have without the fear or that there would be repercussion for their slowness. You know, the patience, having the patience that the author so explicitly states in the beginning with a quote that people who have a lot of intellect lack having. Well, then we'll move on to Matthew 6:5-6. Matthew 6:5-6. God, this bottle. Okay. So Matthew 6:5-6 reads, when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on the street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. I think there's one more, 5:6. Okay, thank you. But when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father who sees everything will reward you. This is another thing that we can use to maybe motivate us to shy away from this condescending or boastful attitude. And it's, we kind of have this thing at home and we joke about it. By no means do we think we do it true, but a while back we had this game. Yeah, he's already laughing. But a while back we had this game, or we still have it really, but we have a game, like a DVD game that you put into the DVD player. I don't know where else you'd put it, but and it's essentially like a Bible. It's like a Bible game where you can like test your knowledge and stuff like that. And what it used to be is we used to call the points that you used to get, because you have to get to the center of the board the quickest, right? Like, I don't know, whatever the game has. But the concept is you had Jesus coins. It's what we messed around with, the idea that, you get the more answers right, you get the more Jesus coins. It's kind of corny talking about it now in front of a bigger audience, but it's an inside thing. But so it's these Jesus coins, right? You want to strive to have the most Jesus coins, so that way when you get to heaven, you can cash them out and you can get this nice prize or whatever. We're kind of like we're kind of treating the things of God like like an arcade. It's not right, but you get the assimilation, right? It's you get the coins through the things that you've done through your life for the Lord God. But here is where we want to focus on why did we choose this specific these two verses. And the reason why is because the moment you boast about something, you do something publicly, you forfeit your Jesus coins. So it's like you're kind of cashing it in for the glory that man gives you. It's like Anthony does something in the media. He paints all the computers black for some reason. I don't know why, but he paints the computers black. And for some reason he goes up here and he boasts about it. And the idea is that by him boasting about it, he's kind of losing those Jesus coins. He's losing that how do we call it? Let's just keep it like that. He's losing the Jesus coins in a sense. So it keeps us motivated to maybe stay maybe not reserved from sharing the things that we do, but reserved from receiving the glory of man and waiting for the glory that God has for us in heaven, when we go up there for him. We go up there with him, okay? So it's the Jesus coins idea. It's integrity without boasting. Integrity without boasting will yield reward in heaven. It's kind of the summary we can get from that. Sorry. Okay. Okay, and then we have a few more verses, just 30 more. I'm just kidding. We have James 3:17, and we're very close to ending here. Okay, so James 3:17, and these are going to be quick verses. These are going to be pretty self-explanatory, and we're going to go through them. There's a few verses here. These verses are more so contain promises and things that we kind of already know, but they're good to write down so that way you have reminders for when you want to look for something like this. Because oftentimes I rely on Google, but Google sometimes doesn't give you the best verses for when you need them. Okay, so James 3:17. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. Key, willing to yield to others, peace-loving, and gentle at all times. When we're showcasing and we're talking to other people about things that we know, or we're trying to share our experiences or something like that, if you identify yourself as being condescending, these are things you have to keep in mind. This is the wisdom that the Lord provides for us. This is what it showcases. This is what it has. Anything else isn't the wisdom of God. It's the wisdom of man. And that's incorrect. That's not what we're supposed to exemplify. So here's that. And then we have Proverbs 10:9. Thank you. People with integrity walk safely, but those who follow crooked paths will be exposed. Integrity, that's kind of self-explanatory. Then we have Luke 6:31. This one, I think we know it. It's just maybe we don't know where it is. But Luke 6:31, the famous golden rule. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. So the way you would want to be treated in the future, maybe by a superior, who is, way up in the ranks and is teaching you how to do a certain task, is the way that you should treat a brother from church who just wants to learn something in the computer. You need to teach him with patience, kindness, and love, because that's how you would like to be treated. Then we have Colossians 3:23-24. And this one is just a general motivation that we can use whenever we're trying to apply this change in character. And it reads, work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward, and that the master you are serving is Christ. And if the master that we're serving is Christ, then we should do an excellent job. And here we have some additional notes. No more verses. We're kind of transitioning out of the verses now. I think it's best if we allow, go through the scriptures and talk about these things in accordance to the scriptures. But here we have some additional notes from the book and maybe from experiences and stuff like that. It'll be quick. If you realize you made a condescending remark, here's what you do. First, apologize quickly. So if you make a condescending remark and you, I know I've done them a bunch of times when I'm up there, but if I make a condescending remark and I come down from there, and I step down or maybe I get a water or something like that and I acknowledge it, first you apologize quickly and explain what it is that you meant and should have said. So 3 things. Apologize quickly, explain what it is that you meant, clarify, in other words, and say what you should have said instead. Okay? So something else is being sensitive to the impacts of this behavior takes prayer and practice. It's kind of like the previous idea where you can't just resolve yourself to change. You're going to need prayer and you're going to need a lot of practice. You're going to have to be don't be self-conscious either, but be conscious about what you say and filter it through the light of God's word. Again, what we just talked about, James 3:17, filter it through that. What is wise for me to say in this situation, despite what my emotions are indicating? Because the emotions can be very betraying, especially the heart. Don't listen to the heart. The heart doesn't know what it's talking about. The Lord does. See what else? Okay. Reflect on phrases or comments you have made throughout the day. That's something I kind of do. At work, I don't really talk to a lot of people anymore. I'm kind of just there. But when I used to work with a lot of people and stuff like that in a working company, I used to reflect on things that I said throughout the day, if either it was for a customer or it was to a fellow employee. I would say, reflect on what you said throughout the day and encourage people to be transparent with you by acknowledging this behavior. So that means you go to people and you acknowledge that you have this behavior. First of all, you say, yes, I have a condescending attitude. I battle sometimes with a condescending attitude. I know I do. Sorry. But I know I battle sometimes with a condescending attitude, and I acknowledge that. And now I want to encourage people to be transparent with me. But you need to acknowledge what it is that you're saying, because by acknowledging that, what you're saying is you're giving people the right to stop you on your tracks and be like, you're being a little bit condescending right now. And that's not going to go well. We're not going to swallow it well when we're taking it at the moment or at the heat of the situation. So, just acknowledge what it is that you're saying. Maybe if you have, friends or stuff like that you kind of express that character with, talk with them and be like, well, I know I have this and I want to get better. The whole deal. You know how to talk. Let's see what else. Okay. An example, I do wanted to give this quick example, and this will end. The author went a direction that I didn't really want to go tonight. The author was giving a lot of examples of the condescending attitude, like phrases that we can say and how we can improve those phrases. And I think as long as we know James 3:17 and the rest of the Bible verses I mentioned tonight, I think we'll be fine. I think we have a brain. We have, between our ears and our 2 eyes, we have a brain up there that can process and, create, can take from what's in the Word of God and apply it to our lives, okay? So, but there's a quick example that I wanted to use here as to how we can change the way we talk so that way we don't sound condescending, even if we feel like we're not battling with it, or it's something that you want to improve on because you acknowledge that you battle with, okay? So, for an example here is, let's make this simple. So when you're talking with someone, let's say, for instance, we're talking with someone about a machine or whatever, and they don't understand what you're talking about, maybe because you're using a lot of technical jargon, which I'm infamous for doing. What you do, and maybe what I've done in the past before, and I sincerely apologize to people I've done it too, is you say a phrase like, let's make this simple. I'm going to simplify it for you. I'm going to dumb it down to you. That is inherently condescending. It might not be something that you identify as condescending. Maybe it's just something you kind of use jokingly, in which case maybe it can fly through if you have a group of people that understand the joke. But if you say something like that in a professional setting, you might find yourself without a job soon. And the reason and the way you change that phrase is by saying something like this: "Please let me know." Please let me know if I'm not being clear enough. That's how you would change that phrase. And I don't want to go too much into it, but the way the author made it sound is that the way in which you change your condescending attitude is by acknowledging that maybe it's not that, well, actually, it's not them that aren't understanding, it's you who aren't communicating correctly. So identifying that and maybe exemplifying that through words, saying, oh, I didn't communicate it correctly, I made the fault, it wasn't you and your understanding or your ability, you're trying your best. Acknowledging that and encouraging the person will allow the person to work a lot quicker alongside you. So yeah, that is all for tonight. I just wanted to, again, give thanks to the Lord for guiding me through the message. I apologize if it wasn't too focused on the topic of the condescending attitude. I kind of wanted to talk about it more in the professional and personal sense. And we talked about the roots of the roots of it, the insecurity and the pride, and how we can attack that root of pride. And of course, the root of insecurity you can fight by identifying yourself as a child of Christ and acknowledging the power and that has in your life. Acknowledging that you are a child of Christ is powerful, especially a child of God. Well, actually both, because anyway. But with that, we'll go ahead and close. I want to again say thanks to the Lord for providing this word, for giving me the ability to come up here and speak, and for my mouth not being too dry, and also for my parents for their prayers, and of course the support of the board members and everyone else here tonight. Thank you for coming and hearing this word. With that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to my dad. Thank you.